this another edition of the Ivan Show. On today's episode, we are bringing you Dr. Fred Muhumuza. He's a first-time guest on this program, and we are going to discuss about the economics. And again, we are going to, among other things, discuss Parliament in its composition, if it is having capacity to really vote, to really vet high-profile individuals. Doctor, welcome to the show, and thanks for allowing to speak to us.
Thank you very much, and welcome to the Makerere University Business School Economics Forum. This is part of our role to demystify and bring basics of economics and policy to the people.
Thank you so much. We understand that with your expertise, you'd be in position to give us the best insights on this discussion. Yeah, Doctor, for 3 years, ever since the former Bank of Uganda, Emmanuel Mutebere died, Uganda has not been having the Bank of Uganda. But the deputy has been in watch over this saga of 60 billions. And now he has been appointed as the full Bank of Uganda governor and his deputy. To him they say Augustus Agava. Yeah. What, in your view as a senior economist, seeing all these things take place, what insights do you give to your view in this matter?
Yeah, there are many things you're raising. One is the duration we have had without a substantive governor.
Yes.
And what happened there, the loss of 60 billion, and where we are moving, or how we go there. First of all, people need to know the governor's office is comprised of the governor and the deputy. You would be more concerned if none of the above was there. So as long as you have a governor, a deputy governor, or a governor, one of the two, the role will be fulfilled. And at least the 3 years have proven to us that much as the provision is for two, the governor and the deputy, even if there is one, there is not much to worry, because the central bank has continuously fulfilled its obligations. The financial sector has remained stable, price stability has remained stable, which also should inform people that that is the role of monetary policy, and it's a committee. So there are other members on that committee, yes, which is chaired by the governor or the deputy governor. So there are many other members of that committee who have been in office to back up the decisions of the governor. The governor is really the apex. Like when you hear cabinet decided, the president was chairing that cabinet, yes, when they made a decision, but it's a whole cabinet. So the strength of such institution is built in those committees, and the committee has been there. The deputy governor has chaired it very well, and you would say to the satisfaction of the appointing authority to even promote him. Because if he had not done that, you wouldn't be seeing the changes that have happened. So with regard to that, I think you tick the boxes that the people have competently handled the office under the chairmanship of the deputy governor, who is now the governor, and now he has a substantive deputy coming into place. The matter of the 60 billion that we read in the press, yes, I think it's a question that is in court. But from the court process and the investigation process, you begin to say, was the central bank involved or not? Now, we can only observe the developments because we are not privy to the information the investigation team is following. But seeing who has been picked first, they are mostly, if not entirely, from the Ministry of Finance. So you begin to say, what was the role thereafter of the governor? Based on what we see now, I don't want even to say what we know, because it is what we see.
We just see
who has been picked. We are yet to see anybody picked from the governor's docket. So that means the investigation team seems to find little or no fault that is to worry anybody, or which will contribute to the investigation on the docket that the previous deputy governor, now substantive governor, was overseeing. So I wouldn't even put this on his side. Based on the knowledge known by the investigation team, they haven't seen reason to pick anybody from that side. So it's more on the Ministry of Finance side.
Doctor, what have we missed without a governor for the past 3 years?
As we've said earlier, really what have we missed? Because governor and deputy governor, they chair the monetary policy committee. As long as the monetary policy committee is in place, one needs to be comfortable. And the comfort, we have seen it. The banks have continued to be strong in Uganda. During this period, we even increased the capitalization requirement for our banks to make them more resilient to if there are any shocks, and many of them have complied. The weak banks have been weeded out. We have had 2 banks leave in this era. Some people thought the mess was, or the end was with Crane Bank when there was the other governor. But it means that the weeding out of weak banks is in the procedure, is in the criteria, is in you meeting the minimum requirements to operate in this market. And it's not who is governor and who is not governor. The rules of the game, once you tell your capital requirement as foreign law or your governance procedures are weak, you are going to exit. You're not going to infect the system. But as economists say, this is not free exit. You just don't exit. You have people's monies. You have to manage your exit. And the immediate provision is whoever had 10 million is protected by the Deposit Protection Fund. And those people are compensated immediately.
Okay.
But also, where do they go? Are they going to lose their transaction and ability to use the banking system? They transitioned on.
Okay.
And they comfortably continued to do their transactions. So you have that built within the system. So the deputy governor therefore has pretended over the system that is global, globally recognized, globally entrenched. So I don't think we have missed anything.
What do you make of the experience and expectations from the 2 gentlemen taking on these roles at the time?
One, the first one, as we've said, has been the deputy. He's been promoted. Confidence in the system that brings him onto the table. And that system is not just the president's appointing letter. It has a lot of processes that lead to that level.
So we assume for the 3 years he has been following them.
He's been following them. If even he was found that he's good but only in that second role, he would have been left there. And they find another person to take over the bigger role. But the mere fact that he has been given the first role, it means he has done exemplarily well. Beyond expectation or up to expectation of managing that docket alone. So that person's competence and his history, Dr. Atingi has been, and congratulations to him, he's been in the central bank space for more than 2 decades and in senior positions. Executive Director, Research. He moved on to the International Monetary Fund, which works very closely with the central banks, because stability of the financial sector is not just to a country. We're also interested in stability of the financial sector across the globe. We have seen what happened when banks collapsed in the US. The ripple effect came across the whole world in terms of higher interest rates, in terms of exchange rate disruptions, in terms lots of distortions. So the central bank, and there are also those financial institutions, IFRS, the International Financial Reporting Systems, that every jurisdiction of a country must comply to. You can modify to switch your context, but you're required to comply with the minimum requirements. So while at the IMF, you also learned that global space. He worked with MEFMI, a macroeconomics framework for East and Southern Africa. That's why he came back to become a deputy governor. So in terms of experience, in terms of exposure, in terms of training, you can trust the appointing authority. Those are the things they were seeing. And many of us would say there's no problem there. He has challenges that will come, but that's why you expect his exposure, his experience, his networks to help manage those turbulence. The turbulence are coming.
What about his deputy?
The deputy also has been in the development space. And as we've said, you don't want to single out one person, because this is not an office where you decide alone. We have also seen it in the judiciary. A magistrate will decide a case alone. A high court judge will decide a case alone. But the moment you go above that, it becomes a quorum. Court of Appeal is more than one magistrate. Supreme Court is more than one person. So you begin to see that the central bank operations, it will be good but as economists say, necessary but not sufficient to identify one person and zoom in on that person. Because the opinion of that person is not going to be the opinion of the decision. The decision is of the committee. But this person will make a contribution. And that's what I've said, the absence of a substantive governor and a deputy was only maybe short-circuiting us on that one thing, that there was one extra brain missing in the conversations.
In the conversation to make.
Because we are saying in the monetary committee is 7 people, including the governor and the deputy governor, and then one is not there. Then they are going to be 6. Or if they are going to be 8, they are going to be 7. So you had the n plus 1, as mathematicians would put it. Now you begin to wonder what would have been the contribution of that extra brain. And we're talking about a brain here of generals of the generals. These are people seasoned in economic matters and policy matters. So
Perhaps
the absence...
perhaps that's why we are having these economic challenges, maybe.
You can say maybe, but also what would the decision, how different would the decision have been? Because some decisions are really set out for you. It's really, as we say, tampering with the margin. When inflation comes, everybody wants to raise interest rates. Now the question could be, how fast should we raise our rate? Should I jump it from 6.5 to 9 or 6.5 to 7? And how long should I stay on 7? That's why the experience and exposure of different individuals comes in. But in the decision to raise the rate in light of inflation, that's a global and economic template. How far should you go?
What are the major challenges the new government is likely to face, and what should be their top priorities in the first month of office?
New governor, old governor. It's literally more or less the same
the
thing.
new appointed.
It's like when Museveni swears in for a 5th term, it is a new president. But really, the occupant of the bedroom is still the same, and the office. But we say it's the new president.
Yes.
But he comes with a lot of the same old policies. And there are numerous challenges out there. One is Uganda has a very high interest rate regime. And in economics, lower interest rates promote investment. They promote employment. They promote economic growth. Now, really we have been on that agenda. Once the economy grow, 50 billion, 500 billion over the next 15 years. But to do that, you need very low interest rates. Now, in Uganda, the central bank is supposed to be the manager of interest rates. But interest rates serve multiple purposes, and sometimes they can be conflicting. If you want to deal with inflation, interest rates will go up, because you don't want people to have money. But if you want to growth, you want people to have money and invest and demand, and the economy grows. So managing that conflict of interest between their main policy variable, which is the interest rate, is going to remain a nightmare or a challenge for the new monetary policy committee that is going to be chaired by the now raised up governor. The other challenge that walks into that space, besides you saying the interest rate, should I promote investment and growth and jobs, or should I manage inflation, which is always a temporary noise in the system, but can be very disruptive. You have another key driver of interest rate in Uganda, which is government borrowing. Because now we see the government need to borrow as the major driver of interest rates. Right now you're talking about 18% almost for a 20-year bond, 16% for a 2-year bond. Now that's already too high even for me who would have learned to lend to an investor. But now everybody with money, including banks and individuals, rather than set up a factory or a business service, you'd rather lend to government and get your return on investment of 18%.
By the way, on that issue of borrowing, I've read the article before I came here about the deputy governor, the new appointed deputy governor. His mind is, he doesn't believe in borrowing. He believes in making use of what is available. Do you think he will help us to overcome or to reduce and minimize our debt burden as a country?
Yeah, that is his view, but now he's going to face the realities in there. It is a view of everybody. You would want to leave the money with the private sector. We have all said private sector-led growth. Now you have government borrowing, which is almost to a level of 35 or 36 trillion. That money, what if government had left it to the private sector? You have your Uganda Development Bank, which is literally $1 trillion. Now compare a trillion for your development bank with 35 trillion locked up in government papers. Anybody would have said, get the 35 trillion back to the private sector. that supply would lower the rates. But can we get the 35 trillion out of government historical purposes and needs? You have seen in our budget, we simply roll it over. We are not even able to pay back the principal. Meaning there are a lot of policy distortions in the system, but we cannot just say, this is what we should do. Because even government rolling over, I think in the next budget, this budget for this year is about 12 trillion. That matures and you're supposed to pay it back. But because you don't have it, you roll it over and only pay the interest. If really you wanted, you would have wanted to pay back that trillion and give it back to the entities. You have about 10 trillion of arrears. Services private sector has given to government and government has not been able to pay. Now you clearly see that government does not have sufficient funds to do its business. So the whole point ceases to be a central bank responsibility, which is monetary policy, and becomes a fiscal policy matter, which is Ministry of Finance. Can we scale down the size of government, which was partly the rationalization, get some agencies out? But I think people never followed it to the script of the Bible. They simply said, oh, some of these people can be absorbed by where the function is going. Yet we are saying there is duplication. What you're doing here, somebody is doing. Meaning if you shift that role, you should not follow. Because you already excess baggage in the system. Now, we have seen that goal is not being realized. So the goal of scaling down government, which would translate into reducing the government budget and therefore the need to borrow, is out. Now, as deputy governor, your view is to go there, but now you have to engage all these stakeholders on the table. Is Mr. Museveni and everybody on the side of the fiscal policy and government ready to scale down government? And there have been proposals people have said for the last 20 years. Too many districts, reduce them. Parliament is too big, reduce it. I don't know what, all sorts of conversations. Noble conversations, but also now you see our roads, which you need to repair and fix your roads. We have about 3-4 major bridges in this country that need immediate repair. Katonga, we are using it still temporary.
Yes.
Karuma, that's still a temporary relief. Sezibu on the east was literally closed. You're talking of Pakwach. Now, these are major bridges. But there are other bridges, everybody in their own local environment. That culvert across that takes children to the school.
Yes.
And takes a border with the Matoke to the market. And makes a cow cross to the other side and get sprayed and come back. Is important to that village community. So that infrastructure requirement needs to be invested into. Can we solve that from the central bank side? A nightmare. But we need to fix it if monetary policy is to promote and complement economic. To do industrialization in a poor setting. And that is why China does export-led growth. Let the rich buy my items. So they will produce things even they don't use in China. But because people out there need them, balloons, Santa. China is not so religious that Santa means anything to them. But the world in Christmas time needs Santa and balloons and all sorts of things. So you want to target that foreign market as you grow your domestic demand and tap both. And that's why Trump is saying, make America great again, I must shut out products that are coming in here from out. I wish him luck. He's waking up too late. But in Uganda, these are things we need to be looking at. And going back to the central bank, the exchange rate is fundamental when it comes to our being competitive with the global market.
Doctor, before you came here, some people from the public were giving some opinions and questioning how Parliament is competent to vet some of the big profile individuals, for example, the Governor Bank of Uganda, the Chief Justice, the IGP. So they are saying that Parliament has a lot of constitutional powers, specifically in vetting. For example, the ministers, IGP, governors, etc. While most of these people are holding sensitive offices, they are always vetted by Parliament, where MPs require only senior 6.
Yes.
So, does this suggest transparency, or these appointments that are made and after being made, they are sent to Parliament to be vetted by senior 6 rivers? Is it a question of transparency or democracy?
I think you look at two things really. Parliament role is oversight.
Yes.
So you don't expect them to get to that level and begin to get into the technicalities of whether this doctor is qualified to be a head of Mulago, to be this kind of thing. Theirs is oversight. And oversight is mainly over a process. By the time a name is sent to Parliament, the respective government entities below are the ones that check for those details. We all know you recruit people, sometimes you first give them aptitude. A computer will check them. Now the computer doesn't know them, but it's checking for certain things, common things. Then they do interviews, and they are sent that many. Then the top 3 are sent for a final level of interview. Now that person who sits at the final level of interviewing may not even know the technicalities of law, of accounting, of I don't know whoever we are recruiting.
Yes.
Because at that level we are no longer checking the competencies. Those were covered by earlier processes. At this point we are checking for the personality, character. Is this a person who knows how to relate with others? Because in such positions you are also the administrator of human beings in that bank. You're not just a governor on technical reasons. You are also the face of the bank. We don't want to come and find you are lying down on the roadside drunk. We don't want to find you down in Angenua dancing. You are a governor, man. So these are things we are checking.
If you are of sound mind.
This is not to say don't go to a launch where somebody is launching a song. But when you go there, please be on a table of 4. That means we are going to pay 10 million for that table. But we are not going to pay 20,000 and stand behind. So they are looking for that because you are the face of the institution. The issues to check whether you qualify as per the constitution and the law have already been addressed. Even for the president, there is that system. So the appointment by the president to send it to parliament, even the president has a system that checks those technicalities. So I wouldn't have a problem because parliament is not entering into that process.
Oh.
It's completely looking at a different thing. But 2, people have the impression that because the minimum entry into parliament is senior 6, everybody there is senior 6. Not true.
Actually, others were saying, if you are vetting
Yes.
Bank of Uganda,
Yes.
why do you bring someone who studied medicine to come and check?
But that means now even those people don't know the vetting and the structure of parliament. There is a committee, speaker, it is by entitlement, not even specific profession. Because as we said, the professional aspects have already been handled by the earlier processes.
Yes.
So at that level, the committee that will vet such high profile people is going to be the speaker, is going to be the deputy speaker, is going to be specific commissioners who are in these roles by structure, not even by their own titles. So the speaker is not a speaker because you did law, you did medicine, or you did what. You are speaker. And the moment parliament has said, Honorable, Right Honorable Anita Among, you are the speaker, by default you are on the committee that will vet. Now you're not bringing your professional learning in school. You're bringing in the things that made you speaker of parliament, which have little to do with whether you were a lawyer, medical person, or teacher. Those brought you to parliament. But to be elected speaker was another criteria by your colleagues, the trust they had in you, but also the trust the public expects in you as a speaker. So we are entrusting you to be in that capacity. So since these are office bearers and has little to do with their professions, at that level we are not checking for professional competencies. Those have already been addressed by the processes. If you are appointing a judge, Mr. Museveni the other day appointed the Deputy Chief Justice. Is Mr. Museveni a lawyer?
No.
Has he been in court? But there is a Judicial Service Commission which will check the history, the character, the cases. It's been monitoring this judge all the way from magistrate to high court to court of appeal to even getting to Supreme Court. It knows that docket. Now if it clears, Mr. Museveni is trusting that system.
So he works on.
So if you really wanted to test this person competent, go and check that system, not the person who has signed the letter. So people need to understand these processes and how they work. But also, as we've said, Parliament is so full of PhDs, masters, diplomas, people of competence, including many with a vast experience.
So people shouldn't undermine it.
They shouldn't undermine it just because the minimum entry.
Senior 6.
Even it might be minimum entry senior 6, but this is a person who has been running a business for the last 50 years. for 60 years, and this business has grown. Do you want to doubt the credibility of that person in making decisions? If he has built such an empire in a turbulent economy like ours and sustained it, he can make right decisions in that parliament. But we are saying, can you speak English? Have you been to school systems? So that's why they even say senior 6 or even equivalent. The guy may never even have such senior 6. But when you look at him, you say this person can come in. Now when you get there, parliamentary business is done in committees. Now they'll make sure this is a medical committee. The chair should be a medical person. This is a local government committee. Who do we give it? Somebody who has been exposed to local government systems. Chair that committee. This is Kosase. Is there somebody who understands these? You can see, and some of them are structured by the constitution that committees on accountability would be chaired by the opposition. So you'll find the Kosase Public Accounts Committee strictly opposition.
Opposition, yeah.
But now the opposition will have to sort among itself. Whether I love you or like you, are you able to represent us as per the requirements of that committee? So Ugandans need to appreciate the nature of the institutions and how they are structured and not demean them just because it's a small thing. These days, finding a police officer on the road who is stopping, that man may have a master's.
That's true.
That's a soldier you see with no rank or small rank. Some of those fellows, I have met soldiers who are the rank of a colonel. They have 2 masters. They're pursuing a 3rd. So you have solid fellows in there, but because we have an opinion about some people or about some institutions, we think they didn't go to school. Gone are those days of the 70s where people used to fail P7 because of their height and chest. They joined the military. Now they have served there, they become seniors. No, this story is different. So inside that parliament are very good, solid brains. In fact, some of them feel they are too strong for parliament. They can use their brains better elsewhere. Because parliament, you speak for 3 minutes.
Yes.
Sometimes you may not even get time to speak.
Actually, General Dr.Fred has been complaining for a little time in parliament.
There is a guy who has been trained to build a case. Give it a context before he concludes. Now you're giving me 3 minutes to conclude. Without a context, I would rather keep quiet. And then people will say he doesn't speak in parliament. It is the structure.
All right, doctors, we conclude our discussion. Give the parting shots to the newly appointed governor and his deputy. And your last word as an economist to the country, what they should expect with this new leadership?
Yeah, I think the main thing is when we congratulate them, and we want to say we'll continue to work with them because many of these have been working with them as academicians who are involved in the policy space. These engagements will continue to have conversations with the banking sector and the central bank itself, because the central bank superintends over the banking sector and a few other advices that it gives to government. So we'll continue to be in that space. There are challenges coming ahead of us. So we are hoping that policies will be and continue to be made informed by the evidence we pick on the ground. Not just in Uganda, but global. Trump is making so many decisions, and I've already been conversing with the people in these sectors to say USAID has closed. What is the implication of that on the Ugandan economy, on the budget, on the jobs? Because remember, the people who have been working on projects paid for by USAID are the few who could get salaries of 5 to 10 million. Now those are out. So revenues will go down. Some of these had taken salary loans in banks. Now they can no longer pay back those loans. What is going to happen? They are renting people's houses. Now they are going to move out of those houses because the tenant, they can't afford the 1 million that they have been paying for rent. So the landlord will also have a problem. URA will have a problem collecting rental income and all sorts of things. So there are quite a number of impacts that are coming through because of the executive orders that are being signed across the Atlantic. But also now Trump putting sanctions and tariffs on partners of the West. We are going to see changes. Opportunities will emerge. Because some countries are now saying in Europe, it's becoming risky to trade with America. Where else can we go and trade? Now, Europeans, whatever they were buying from America, they may not come to buy it here. But they may decide and say, can we go and produce this in Africa for ourselves? Or support Africa to come up and produce it. This is what has been traded in Latin America, in Asia. So the opportunities emerging, but it's going to take all of us being alert to say, under the new dispensation, what are the negatives? What are the positives? What is it that we are not seeing? So the new team in the bank needs to come up at that page and say, we have a script we have been following, but let's also generate a fresh script, what we call generative strategic thinking. Call anybody out there. Picking ideas is not a mandate of one person. And that's why I was emphasizing the thing about the central bank is monetary policy committee. It has a lot of brains. People who meet others and they hear what you may not have heard and they bring it into that. So let's be open, receptive to ideas, flexible to them. Let's also engage across the aisle on the fiscal side, streams of government. Say, Mr. Government, monetary policy is very hard to manage when there is fiscal distortions.
Doctor, thank you so much for giving us your time and for allowing to speak to us.
It's a pleasure.
We have been with Dr. Fred Muhumuza discussing about the economics of this country and the composition of parliament regarding to vetting of the high-profile individuals. And the parting shots he gives to the new appointed governor and his deputy, I think, is going to take a watch on this discussion. Thank you so much for being a lovely viewer. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. I'm Ivan Tukundani, and this is The Ivan Show.